Hey guys, welcome back to another demonstration video. In today's video, what I'd like to do is show you how to plasma cut. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break this video up into a few different areas. We're going to start with some safety, I'm going to start with some settings, then I'm going to move on to some actual cutting where I'm going to show you how to freehand, and then I'm going to show you how to set up a fence and make some nice straight cuts. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to show you that PPE or safety equipment. Alright, so above all, you need to make sure that you're wearing your safety glasses, you got your work boots on, and you got your long pants on. Those are just the requirements for the shop, so I'm not going to go over them in this video. But I'm going to go over a few quick items before we get started. The first one is the actual torch. This one has the only real safety device in plasma cutting, and it's got this little yellow tab, and I'm going to try to show it to you. This little yellow tab makes it so that you can't press down that trigger, so that there's no accidental, firing of this gun. So when you're using it, you're going to need to push this up, and then you can pull the trigger back. It's turned off right now, and that's why we're not having any flames come out. So set this to the side, and we're actually start talking about our PPE. The first thing that I like to talk about is the face shield. This is a shade 3. I want to make sure that you guys are using a shade 3. It's kind of, there is some bright lights that come off plasma cutting, so it's just smart to make sure that you're fully protected. I personally like the face shield. That way, if you are cutting along and some spatter flies back out at you, some sparks or something, the face shield will keep you safe, all right? The next one is just leather gloves. These are the leather gloves that we stock here in the classroom. You can wear any leather gloves that you want. I do not want to see any gloves that have some sort of stretchy material, such as like a polyester or just some plastic type stuff that could melt. All right, so make sure that they are all leather. This is probably the most important safety item that you will be using, because your hands will be close to flames or hot metal. The next thing is a leather jacket. It doesn't have to be a leather jacket. You just need to make sure that you are wearing some sort of long sleeve device. All right. I personally like the leather because it's going to give you the most protection. So if it were up to me, I would wear a leather jacket, but you can wear a long sleeve shirt or something like that. Make sure, again, it's not polyester or some sort of plastic that is meltable. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at the settings, and then let's get started cutting. So I've pretty much gone and done all the settings that we went over in our previous video. I'm putting it about 30-ish amps. I'm going to make sure that my air is correct here. I'm going to go ahead and actually drop that down, bring it into the appropriate levels, and then I've just got it set for general cutting. So for what we're doing today, these are the perfect settings. What I'm going to do is I probably will bump it up when I go to the thicker 3/8 metal, but for this thinner stuff, that 20 to 30 range is probably perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so the first thing I want to show you guys how to do is just some freehand cuts. Make sure that you got your face shield down. All you're going to do is take your torch here. You're going to go ahead and lift up that yellow trigger guard. You're going to put the cutter down straight onto the metal. It's actually going to touch, and you're going to go ahead and pull the trigger. Let's take a look at that closer. All right, so like I said, we're going to come in, we're going to lift up our trigger guard, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the tip onto the metal. I'm going to split the tip on the edge, all right? So what happens if you try to actually cut right in the middle of a piece of metal? It takes a second for it to blow through. So you always start on the edge. It makes it a little bit easier. I'm not saying you can't start in the middle. I'm just saying it's easier for you guys that are beginning to start on the edge, all right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull the trigger and just start pulling it along. You're going to want to go nice and slow with no abrupt speed up or slow down to get a nice clean cut. Alright, so there's not a heck of a lot of other tricks to it. You're just going to, like I said, you're going to start on the edge. You're going to go ahead and you're going to pull the trigger and just start slowly feeding it into the metal. If you get a bigger piece of metal, you want to go a little bit slower. Thinner ones, you can go a little faster. Alright, so let's move on to using a fence so we can get a nice clean cut. As you can see, this one is pretty rough. I've went ahead and upped the size, so this is a 3/8 inch plate, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna try to do a nice, clean, smooth, straight cut. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this is about a 1.5 inch bar as a fence. You can use anything that's around 1 inch size, okay? So all we're gonna do is we're gonna clamp this bar down to the table, and then we're gonna use, or a piece of metal that we're working on, and we're gonna use it as a straight line, an edge that we can be pulling our torch across. So I'm gonna show you how to do that really quick, how to do that nice and square. The first thing I'm gonna do is, you can see that this edge is it's pretty crappy. It's got a pretty rough edge. So we're gonna go ahead and take this square. You can take any square out of the shop. I like this one because it's pretty big and I don't have to find all the pieces for it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna draw a nice straight line. Now you have two options right here. You can, one, measure half an inch to 9/16 back, and that's where this fence is gonna be needing to place. The reason we do that is because if you look at our torch, the center of the torch and the side is about half an inch. I think it's about half an inch or 9/16. So we're gonna need to place the fence that half an inch or 9/16 away from the line that we wanna cut. So the options are, we could take this soapstone and we could just put the soapstone in between our fence and our line, because these are exactly half of an inch wide. Or if you were doing a much longer piece or a longer part, you could just measure an extra half an inch to whatever line you were measuring, and that could be where you place your fence. But that is very important to make sure that you always do. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put this here. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure it's right on the line. It is very important that you get it square. And I'm gonna take these C-clamps and I'm gonna go ahead and clamp this down to my part. And that's really just so when I'm working with it or I'm cutting, I'm not gonna get twisted up and I'm not gonna move that fence. When you're actually cutting, it's very easy to move things around. So we wanna make sure that we got everything clamped down. And you don't have to use C-clamps. This is just what I had accessible. I probably would recommend that you get like just some vice grips or something like that with a bigger jaw on them that can do this really quick, and it just saves you time. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna put on my safety items, my PPE, and I'm gonna go ahead and fire up the machine. We're gonna go ahead and cut this. Again, I'm gonna up it to about 45 amps when I'm cutting this. This is kind of a big piece of metal for that plasma cutter. So I'm gonna cut it and we're gonna see how it looks. Some of the things that I want you to keep in mind when you're doing this is you need to make sure that this cutter is directly straight up and down. If you tilt out or you tilt in, that's actually gonna change the dimension of your cut. So you wanna cut exactly the same all the way through. On a very long piece, it's very easy to get going, and then you tilt in a little bit or you tilt out a little bit. It's very imperative that you make sure that it's a nice straight up and down cut when you're coming along here. Again, with the 3/8 material, you wanna go a lot slower and you wanna let that thing cut in. If, when you're cutting along this part or any part, sparks start flying up at you, you need to slow down. You need to slow down, let it actually cut through there. It's just too fast for the size of material you're cutting on. You could potentially also see that it's not cutting all the way through, but it still is blowing the sparks down. Slow down. Let the torch do the work. Don't go too fast. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and fire this up and we're gonna make this cut. It is a little bit hard with these in the way, so I would recommend you do those vice grips if you can. I got a little bit fast there on the end, and that's why it didn't fully fall off. So now you can see how nice and straight that cut is. You just let the cutter do the work, let that fence do the work. It's gonna come out really nice and clean. All right, so I wanted to show a little bit of a different way of doing that. I wanted to use the tape measure, and I wanted to kind of get a little bit more in depth. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna cut a 2-inch strip out of this. And what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna measure an extra 1/2 inch on here. So that way when we cut, or we place the fence, I should say, and we cut, we're gonna end up with a 2-inch strip. So that's a very popular size. More than likely, you might even have to do that as your project. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna measure my 2 inches right here. I'm gonna go ahead and actually measure an extra 2.5. Oops, that was a bad line. I can do that a little bit better. All right, I'm gonna take my square and I'm gonna go ahead and measure that 2.5 inches all the way across. So that way, when I place my fence over here, I'm gonna go ahead and I can just look down and I can make sure that it's correctly in line with that 2.5 inches. I'm gonna throw my clamps back on here. Again, the vice grips would be a lot easier than these. Oops. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and fire up the plasma cutter and I'm gonna cut that out. All right, so that's all I have for plasma cutting. I hope you guys got a lot out of that. As always, if you'd like to have some help or you'd like somebody to demo that in person so maybe you feel a little more comfortable, please let me or one of the instructors know. It's really not that hard. This is really probably the easiest cutting process you'll have to do. So good luck. Please let me know if I can help.